You brought it up when you walked in. I have a few concerns regarding the stop program, red light camera, as you just said. First of all, I put together a website called don'tflashmebro.com. My name is Joe Bourgeois. I've done quite a bit of research and have some questions. First of all, are you aware, and if so, why, does not Redflex have a business license to operate in this city? Secondly, are you aware that Redflex is not in good standing with the Department of Corporations in the state? They have failed to file timely reports twice a year as they're required, and they're into, and I verified this with a gal in the reports department of the Department of Corporations yesterday, that they are non-compliant and are at the $200 fine when they do submit the reports that were due March 15th. Would you consider stopping the program in its tracks right now until they're in compliance?
Well, that's a very good question. No, I was not aware that they hadn't paid a business license, nor the situations that you described. I will tell you that, and I think Councilor Jones will probably agree, when we set the policy in place, obviously we have a professional staff that does implement that, and you would think that that would be up to them. Ultimately, of course, though, that is concerning, and that is something there that I'm sure either Councilor Jones or myself will contact Mr. Matt Johnson and others, and I'm sure that'll get rectified ASAP.
Okay, then a couple last things. One directed at you.
See, I know I should have said that in the beginning. I should have just put my mouth on it.
There was a article in the Las Cruces Sun News on the 27th of last month, where you were asked what would the slop factor be for the speed on the cameras, and you refused to answer, as well as Dan Trujillo, who's with the, I guess, public information officer for the police department. I think you should be ashamed for not answering that. I know, based on, like I said earlier, the research I've done, that Mike Johnson, with the Public Works Department, instituted a 5-mile-an-hour slop factor. Are you aware, is this still the same? Has it been increased, decreased, changed?
Okay, I'm going to let you ask one more question. I'll answer that, but we probably need to let the others have some more questions. But, now, you mentioned about the 5-mile-an-hour calibration.
Slop factor, variance, tolerance, I don't know what you want to refer to it.
You refer to it as a 100% as a matter of fact?
No,
you just...
by slop factor I mean...
No, I know.
It's 35.
You said 5 miles and over.
If the speed limit is 35 miles an hour, and this is what was said at that last meeting on February, then the camera will not trigger speed unless they're going 41 or more miles per hour. In other words, there's that 5 mile an hour.
No, I do understand. But where did you get the 5 miles an hour from?
From your city council meeting.
We never disclosed that.
Absolutely you did. You can check it on my website. Mike Johnson stood up there and said he is instituting a 5-mile-an-hour slop factor variance. I think he referred to it as a variance, so that people going 1 mile an hour too, because one of the council members brought this up. So I know for a fact, and I do have copies of the meeting minutes where this was addressed on my website. But like I said, I was concerned, why the secrecy on what the variance is?
Well, that's a very good point. That's a very good question, by the way. If the city was to disclose that you can speed, if we were to say, you know what, you can go 15 miles an hour, 15 miles over the limit, then in essence, we're not only are we condoning it, we're almost implying that it's okay to speed. Okay? Now, also being the fact that if there were an accident and a good lawyer would say, you know what, the city said that you can go 10 miles over that speed limit and still be okay. Now, I will tell you this much, and I want you to listen very carefully. And if it did say 5 miles, I would like to see that.
Absolutely.
But we will have some statistics after the first round, probably the first 3 months or 6 months. And in those statistics, you're going to see the number of citations given for running red lights, for people speeding 10 miles to 15 miles, from 16 miles to say 25 miles an hour, and so on and so forth. You'll be able to see what the number of citations are, and if you listen very carefully what numbers I'm using, you'll recognize what these things are calibrated at. And that's all I'm going to say. I think the amount that they are calibrated is a very fair amount, extremely fair amount, that if you are going that fast over the speed limit and you still get hit with a red light or with a ticket, then you probably, at that fast, at the amount that the city has given. And by the way, the number of tickets that were given when it came out in the paper, the 3,700 in those so many days, that was at the current calibration it is right now. And it is not 1 mile an hour. And it's higher. So that's all I'm going to say. But again, you will see those statistics from 10 to say 15 miles an hour, and then from say 16 to 20, 25 miles an hour, and then faster. And then you'll see how many tickets are there. I'm just going to leave it at that. Hopefully you understand that part. Yes, sir.
Just as a follow-on to that, you said that a good lawyer could go in and say, well, you allowed this much slot factor and in case there was an accident. The fact that there is a variance built into it cannot be secret from the public in the long run. And it certainly would come out in court if there were an accident there. So why is there any tolerance other than the 35 mile an hour speed limit?
Well, because of the fact that there are some, anytime you put, even if you put a larger wheel, let's say...
Let the people argue that in front of the judge. If you're calibrated by that traffic light doing 35 miles an hour, doing 36 miles an hour, then you should get, otherwise the city is tolerating a higher speed limit than the posted speed limit. And that will bring liability down to the city in the long run.
Well, I think the fact of the matter is this, and again, that's a very good point that you make. But I think, and Councilor Jones can, if he wants to chime in on this, but I think that the ultimate goal of the City Council is not to give you a speeding ticket. It is to slow your speed down. And I have discussed this with senior management as far as if it wants to be disclosed, and it was brought back and forth. But if you hear what I just said about what probably the statistics are going to be, when you read that, you're going to pick up as to why certain tickets aren't there and where it starts. Now, anytime, let's say hypothetically you have a car and you decide to put larger wheels on it. You've just changed the miles per hour, but again, our goal is to reduce speeding. It's not to give you a ticket. In fact, when those fines come in, one of the first things that I'm going to ask our council to do, because it can only be spent, it can't be going into our general fund, excuse me, by the way. It has to be used for traffic safety. It has to be used for more traffic safety, whether it's traffic signals, traffic safety lights, educational things. It can be used for the overtime for the police officers that we're going to have on staff to review. But one of the things that I think we need to have is one of those lights that show your speed sign, your speed limit, as you're nearby there, as you're approaching it, because that'll do two things. One, that'll trigger you saying, you know what, I'm coming on an intersection that has camera, and two, it tells you what your speed limit is. And so if we do that, in addition to the variance that we have, I think that is something there that I think is very fair. Excuse me, ma'am, are you recording this?
Yes.
Okay.